50 movies that wouldn't be made today. A lot of the old stuff we used to watch wouldn't reach theaters today. Whether you're happy about it or not, these are 50 films that couldn't be remade in the modern era. Tropic Thunder. Funny or not, Tropic Thunder uses blackface for comedy. The character Kirk Lazarus, played by Robert Downey Jr., is supposed to be ridiculous, and other characters call him out for his racist interpretations. Still, it didn't sit well with some audiences. Revenge of the Nerds. The nerds aren't supposed to be the bullies, but they turn out to be pretty bad when they spy and photograph a bunch of sorority girls while they're in their birthday suits. Then, they pass around the pictures later. Me, myself and Irene. The film is about a guy that has schizophrenia, but the way it's portrayed is pretty bad. It's a misconception that those who have schizophrenia have multiple personalities, and this film perpetuates that issue. Soul Man. The general plot of this movie is pretty bad. It's about a white guy who wants to go to law school but can't afford it. So, his solution? To paint his face black. Despite the things surrounding the subject matter, from a financial point of view, Soul Man was a big hit. It ended up bringing in $35 million with just a $4.5 million budget. Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves. Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves wasn't a stellar movie for several reasons, but if it were made today, it wouldn't be tolerated. There's a scene near the end of the film where Robin has to save Maid Marian from the sheriff. That scene was supposed to be funny, as he attempted to force himself onto Marian right at the altar. I Now Pronounce You Chuck and Larry. I Now Pronounce You Chuck and Larry is about two straight guys who decide to marry each other so one of their children can receive health care. Not only is it insurance fraud, but it's also beyond rude to same-sex couples that have waited for the opportunity to get married. White Chicks. White Chicks is about two black detectives who decide to go undercover as two white chicks, hence the title. The film makes fun of white people, and those that watch it today know that it couldn't be remade in the same fashion even if it was funny. The Last Samurai. In this film, Tom Cruise played a washed-up, sloshed ex-military who had no purpose in life until he's taken in by a clan. He then lays himself on the line to preserve the samurai way of life. An American is cast in the central role as a savior, and it's historically inaccurate. Basic Instinct. Everyone remembers the famous Sharon Stone flash, but apparently, Sharon Stone regrets the film altogether. The scene that made her most famous wasn't supposed to be shown. The director lied to her and said that it wouldn't make the final cut. Breakfast at Tiffany's. No one is saying that Breakfast at Tiffany's was a bad movie. On the contrary, it's probably one of the best movies of all time. What wasn't good was Mickey Rooney's interpretation of Iwai Yunioshi. He wore fake teeth and pretended to be a Japanese man. Blazing Saddles. Blazing Saddles is a little iffy. Something like this would have a hard time releasing in our society today, but it needs to be said that Brooks used every scene to make social commentary on issues society had been debating at the time. If you've seen it, you know what we're talking about. Grease. Some people took umbrage at the hot and heavy relationship between the two main characters. There were accusations of sexism in the way Danny Zuko treated his love interest, Sandy. However, leading lady Olivia Newton-John said people were taking it way too seriously. The Producers. Mel Brooks released his first directed movie, The Producers, just 2 decades after World War II, and he pulled all the stops. The movie was actually remade in 2005 and starred Matthew Broderick and Nathan Lane. 16 Candles. 16 Candles was an 80s classic, but this is the kind of thing that wouldn't fly today. In the film, a character's pants are stolen by another, and he trades his super drunk girlfriend in exchange for his pants. Despite all the outrage, 16 Candles is still considered an iconic movie. You Only Live Twice. We could list nearly every old James Bond film, but You Only Live Twice is easily the one that belongs here. It features James Bond pretending to be Japanese. It's an awful portrayal that's only made worse by Sean Connery affixing artificial eyelids, a jet black toupee, and bushy eyebrows. Gone with the Wind. Gone with the Wind is a classic, but many people see it as unacceptable. There are claims that the film creates a fond nostalgic image of slavery. However, even if the film was talked about non-stop for its scenes, it still made a splash. The Jerk. The Jerk is a comedy with Steve Martin, playing a man that believes he was born a poor black child in Mississippi. As you can imagine, the character was less than sensitive. Steve Martin recently did an interview saying that everyone in the film was treated with such respect. The Toy. The Toy wasn't really a hit in its time despite starring Richard Pryor. Today, we're guessing that there would be plenty of comments due to the premise alone. It's about a spoiled white boy who picks out a goofy black guy as his new toy. Ace Ventura, Pet Detective. Everyone can admit that the second Ace Ventura is leagues ahead of the first. Part of that could have been due to the story. It's built around a plotline that is unfavorable to same-sex relationships as well as transgender people. Silence of the Lambs. Silence of the Lambs is pretty terrifying, but Buffalo Bill made a lot of people furious, and not because he was such a scary villain that would haunt your dreams. Many people consider the film to be transphobic as Buffalo Bill is a cross-dresser, among other things. Planet of the Apes. Planet of the Apes is a classic, but it brings up some pretty stark scenes. Throughout the film, we see light-skinned apes commanding dark-skinned apes that seem, which is pretty reminiscent of another time in history. Granted, many people see the movie as an allegory about race and politics. Transformers, Revenge of the Fallen. The Transformers films aren't good, but none are worse than Revenge of the Fallen. This is mostly thanks to the two little stereotypical robots, Mudflap and Skids. The little bots are incredibly bad and fit every stereotype the creators could fit into two characters. The Passion of the Christ. The Passion of the Christ was made by Mel Gibson, a man who isn't shy about making headlines in a bad way. What made this film such a problem was the amount of suffering and how long they spent on it all. There are ridiculously gruesome scenes that make audiences turn away. Bruno. Sacha Baron Cohen has earned an infamous reputation for his bizarre films. Bruno took this to a whole new level. The film received a North Carolina 17 rating due to its obscene scenes and raunchy jokes. Ukraine even banned the film completely. Dogma. Kevin Smith was known for his vast usage of fart jokes and innuendos, but Dogma was so bad that it made heads spin and your grandma gasp. The film offended the entire Catholic community for its religious satire. I Spit on Your Grave. The original I Spit on Your Grave from 1978 had plenty of scenes that weren't for the squeamish. The second half of the film in particular is filled with scenes of violence and revenge. Sausage Party. Sausage Party literally had audiences rolling when it premiered in 2016. The film was highly controversial due to its extreme nature and indiscriminate roasting of every type of person in existence. If you easily get riled up, this is probably one movie that you're going to want to avoid. Knocked Up. Knocked Up pokes fun at the extremely sensitive topic of accidental pregnancy. It paints women as shrews, humorless, and uptight. Men are allowed to be children while the woman must be the adult in the situation. Yeah, that's totally fair. The Birth of a Nation. Split into two parts, The Birth of a Nation begins with the build-up to the Civil War and includes a truly massive and impressive scene on the battlefield. Part 2, which explores Reconstruction, is where the movie really goes off the rails. Many of the black characters are portrayed by actors in blackface, and all are portrayed as uncivilized and aggressive. Manhattan. The movie is full of classic Woody Allen self-deprecation and love for New York. The only problem? The 17-year-old love interest. Mariel Hemingway plays Allen's teenage love interest, and, at the time of its release, no one really batted an eye at this storyline. Cruising. Cruising is a tense thriller starring Al Pacino, who plays an undercover cop pretending to be a gay man in order to capture a serial killer targeting other gay men. At the time of its release, it angered gay activists because of the fact that the killer is a gay man who can't come to terms with his sexuality. The Last Temptation of Christ. The film, starring Willem Dafoe as Jesus Christ, is only loosely based on the accounts found in the Christian Bible. Imagine a lot less parables and a lot more intimate tension between Jesus and Mary Magdalene. Some people found the film so bad that they actually set fire to a Paris movie theater screening the film. Love Guru. As you can imagine, a movie about a white Canadian portraying an Indian guru of love wasn't exactly sensitive. For some people, it was so chock full of Indian caricatures that it was downright unfunny. A Clockwork Orange. Most of the problems surrounding this film stem from a disturbing assault scene near the beginning. It was considered bad enough that the movie was actually withdrawn from screening in Great Britain, and it had to be edited down in order to not receive an X rating in the United States. Shallow Hal. Shallow Hal follows the titular character, played by Jack Black, as he is hypnotized into falling in love with a morbidly obese woman, played by Gwyneth Paltrow, who he can only see as drop-dead gorgeous. People obviously took great umbrage at the basically non-stop barrage of fat jokes in the film. Dumbo. Dumbo is a classic Disney movie that has some questionable content that goes a little far. Remember the Crows? One of them was literally named Jim Crow. Mother. Darren Aronofsky's Mother has a twist metaphor that's so heavy-handed it's nearly impossible not to see it coming from a mile away. Jennifer Lawrence, playing the titular mother, is meant to represent Mother Earth and how we constantly mistreat her. However, this was lost on critics who thought it was sexist the way Lawrence's character was treated. Freaks. Freaks is a 1932 film about a circus performer who plans to take out one of her fellow performers in order to get her hands on his inheritance money. Most of the complaints center around the fact that the film cast several people who were real performers in circus freak shows. These included a bearded lady, an armless wonder, and Siamese twins. Heavenly Creatures. Heavenly Creatures marked the movie debut of then budding actress Kate Winslet. In it, she and Melanie Lynskey play a pair of teenage girls with one of the most disturbing, psychosexual relationships ever shown on screen. So why do people have objections to this one? Probably because it was based on a real-life case in New Zealand, where two teenage girls actually killed one of their mothers. Dressed to Kill. The movie, starring Michael Caine, is about a woman who is brutally murdered after an intense one-night stand. Caine plays the woman's therapist, who is seemingly trying to help find the person who did it, but he ends up being the villain, a cross-dressing serial killer. The Mask of Fu Manchu. Based on the novel of the same name, the movie follows Fu Manchu as he embarks on an adventure to find the golden sword and mask that once belonged to Genghis Khan. After its release, it was criticized by the Chinese government, claiming that it made Chinese people look bad. Star Wars: The Phantom Menace. There are plenty of legitimate reasons to hate Star Wars: The Phantom Menace. However, some people, in particular, got upset at one particular character, Jar Jar Binks. Some of the most unhinged critics went as far as to compare him to a blackface minstrel, which is not exactly a level-headed assessment of a fictional alien character. Lady and the Tramp. Even classic, beloved Disney films aren't safe from the mobs these days. At one point in the film, Lady runs into a couple of troublemaking Siamese cats who do a little song and dance called, "We Are Siamese If You Please." This one got some pants in a twist because of the Asian aspect. Peter Pan. The movie is about a whimsical world where Peter and his clan of young boys do their best to avoid growing up and avoid the ire of comic villain Captain Hook. The problem that's exploded in recent years has to do with the Native Americans depicted in the film. They probably could have done without the number, "What Made the Red Man Red?" Find more at alot.com.